Logic and emotion can both help and hurt you on the weight loss journey. In today's video, we're going to talk about why that is. So the other day, I was rereading this book, Never Split the Difference, which is, by the way, a really great book. But it reminded me of a very important principle that is sometimes easy to forget. And that is that we are emotional creatures. We like to think of ourselves as very rational and like we're just doing the things that are rational all the time. But the truth is we're usually acting on our emotions. And this can be really bad on the weight loss journey because your emotions can really take the wheel and get you off course. But on the other hand, sometimes we use too much logic and we try to just push our emotions to the side, and that's not good either. So in this video, I'm just going to talk about the things that I learned on my 80-pound weight loss journey, the times where I found logic was really helpful, and the times where I found emotion was really helpful. And I hope that by providing these examples, it can help you, because sometimes when you're in the moment and you're on the weight loss journey, it's hard to tell when you're being emotional versus when you're actually being rational, or perhaps sometimes when you're being too rational. So the first way that came to my mind where I had really let emotions get in the way of my progress on the weight loss journey was with weighing. I was really emotional about the idea of weighing. I didn't want to do it. And the truth was I was just scared. I didn't want to weigh because I was scared of that number. And since I let emotion drive the bus for so long, for years, of not weighing, what ended up happening was I was just spinning my wheels. I wasn't really losing any weight and I was getting frustrated. But, it was, again, that emotion. I didn't want to weigh because emotionally I didn't want to weigh. It had nothing to do with logic. Logically, it would have helped me to know where I was. And so it was only after trying to get into that logical spot where I said, I have to know that number, because until I know that number, I really don't know if I'm losing weight. That's when the progress really started to happen for me. And so many times, what I found for myself was problems with consistency. That usually had to do with emotion, although sometimes it was actually logic that was the problem. If I just used my emotions to tell me whether or not I should do my 6-mile walk, I would probably do it about 30% of the time. But because I realized I'm not always going to feel like I want to, and I just told myself I'm committed to doing this. And because of that, my consistency has been really high with my walking. I stick to the plan because I'm not depending on my emotions. I am just depending on sticking to the logical plan that I put into place. But on the other hand, it's important that when you're picking your plan, you don't want to only look at logic. Because if you only look at pure logic, you're likely going to pick a really hard plan that you are not going to stick to over the long run. And the reason for that is you're not even taking your emotions into account. And emotions, again, are the thing that generally drive our behavior. So you have to keep that in mind. And that, for me, is the reason why I don't do things like keto or just trying to say I'm not going to eat carbs, because emotionally I know what it's like to be at, like a birthday party and try to say, no, I can't eat cake right now. Emotionally, that's really tough and I don't like doing it. So knowing that about myself, that I will grow resentful and emotionally, probably over the short term, I can stick with that. Over the long term is a terrible plan for me. And definitely my cheat day is an example of how I used some emotion on my plan instead of just going with pure logic. I mean, purely logically speaking, it would make more sense. Just 7 days a week, you're on the same plan and you never take a day off. And yeah, maybe you will have, from a logical standpoint, you would think, well, that will give you the best results and the optimal results and you'll have the quickest progress. But again, if you're not taking your emotions into account, then you're missing things like, wow, that 1 day off a week is like a refreshment. It makes it feel easier and you don't feel so restricted. And those feelings help you out in the day-to-day long-term progress. But it can be kind of difficult when you are in the day-to-day of the weight loss to figure out, are you being, too emotional or not emotional enough? Or are you being too logical or not logical enough? And it is kind of a balancing act. And, especially for us women, we tend to be more emotional, I think, as far as our emotion fluctuations tend to be a bit more than our male counterparts. But still, everybody does use a lot of emotion in their day-to-day decision making. So what has worked for me really is to recognize when I am probably being emotional. And for me, I know about myself. I mean, certainly emotional eating is a thing for me, so I have to remember not to do that. But, if I'm just feeling, I'm feeling stressed out or I'm feeling like I don't like this plan, or I'm feeling like I'm just not making progress, those are times when I tell myself, okay, we need to flip onto the logical part. And the way to do that is to, use data, use these objective measurements. For example, you may from time to time feel like you're plateauing. I mean, that was something I felt like a lot on the weight loss journey. But if I sat down with my numbers, those are objective measurements that I can look at and see. And then I can be really specific and say, okay, actually I have lost a pound this month, and it's just, that I'm just going to have to wait this out. But there are other times where you may just be relying too heavily on logic. Like for me in 2015, I think a lot of times I was relying too much on logic because I was picking things to do based on, okay, logically, this is very difficult exercise, so therefore it will lead to fast weight loss. Or, like I'm going to restrict calorie. I'm going to count every calorie. I'm going to weigh and measure all of my food, and I'm going to be in a huge deficit, and I'm going to lose weight really quickly. And while that was maybe logically correct, the thing was I wasn't thinking about my emotions and all the resentment that was causing me, which eventually did lead to me quitting over and over and over again. And lastly, emotion is super helpful when you're trying to find your motivation. Ultimately, a really big why will overcome any how. So if you can really dig deep with the why question, that can get into some deep emotion. For me, when I really dug deeply into that question, I found some really important motivations. I wanted to set a good example for my kids. I wanted to feel comfortable in my body. I wanted to feel like I could move around and have freedom. And I just didn't feel that when I was obese. And that's the type of thing that can keep you going. So the emotions are really good. It's just that they can also get you off track. The key is to just use the emotions for the right reasons and to kind of ignore the emotions when they're going to try to get you off track. And I think this takes practice too. Sometimes it's difficult to see in the moment that you're being emotional, and it's difficult sometimes to see that you're being too logical. And I would encourage you that if you do find, that you're kind of feeling stuck, you're not really sure what's going on, kind of troubleshoot it for yourself. You can ask yourself, if you're feeling resentment and things like that, it might be that you've been too logical with yourself, and you've put maybe really strict rules into place, and you haven't really allowed for some enjoyment. On the other hand, if you're having problems like you're having trouble getting started, or you're having trouble sticking to a plan, it might be the plan's too hard, you were using too much logic, or it might be that you just don't have a big enough why yet. You really don't know why you're wanting to lose weight. So, digging into those emotions can be helpful. So I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.